And for them to jump on this bandwagon and try to promote this agenda is just disgusting to me. So let's start with where this audit the Fed bill will go. Let's say it goes into Congress. What has to happen so that they actually do audit the Fed? And then let's talk about City Year, Lou.
Jason, first I gave you the wrong number. It's 179 co-sponsors.
Well, that's close enough to 180.
Not just at 180 yet. But it's thrilling. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, and for that matter, the Republican leadership, of course, will try to block this bill. Mm-hmm. But if it actually were to come to a vote, it's Ron Paul's view that very few people are going to be willing to vote for total secrecy at the Fed. That the whole of Congress is upset because they can't find out where all this money has gone. And, so the fact this bill has a very, very good chance of passing. If it were to pass, it could be the beginning of the end for the Federal Reserve because these are like cockroaches in a dark kitchen. They can't stand the flashlight. So this Ron Paul's bill is a flashlight, and it's pointing at these people. And if he can turn it on, it's going to have just a very good effect in educating the American people. And who knows what they'll find. I mean, these guys at the Fed live very, very well. Even the lowest-ranking people have limos, and they have hotel suites in four-star hotels, and they eat at the fanciest restaurants, and they all do very, very well. They print their own budget, by the way. This is the only agency of government that doesn't have a budget that's actually approved by Congress. And I'll admit that's not much of a limit, but it's a little something. But the Fed just decides what they want to print for themselves, and they print it. Well, is there something funny about that? Of course, there's got to be oversight of the Federal Reserve. If there is such a thing as a central bank, and there should not be from a moral or an economic or a constitutional or a political point of view, as Ron Paul always points out, if there is a Fed, there has to be oversight. Somebody has to be looking at what they're doing, and to the extent that it can be exposed, and my guess is that we would have a lot of things like the British parliamentary scandals, these people printing up money, and it hurts every American when they print up this money, to live high on the hog. Let's find out what these birds are doing. It's unfortunately not going to point out, everything they're doing, but it's going to tell us some of the things they're doing. And I think when that happens, there can be a political explosion, be much more interest on the part of the American people to really go after the central bank. This thing is ripping us off again to the tune of trillions of dollars. And of course, because these numbers are so big, they're hard to understand what's going on. But if you can find out that some lower-ranking Fed official took $25,000 for some extra deal, that kind of thing people understand. It can bring about indignation at the Fed. There should be demonstrations outside the Fed. People should be angry at the Fed. The Fed is much worse for us than the IRS or the EPA or the rest of the alphabet from hell in Washington, D.C. The Federal Reserve is the worst operation, at least domestically, of the federal government.
Yeah, and it's not really even an agency of the federal government. It's kind of like a quasi-agency. It's really a private banking system with no oversight whatsoever. Let's say this bill does pass. Do you really think that we will see oversight of the Fed, or will we see this bill vetoed? Like, obviously you said, there's going to be opposition, Pelosi. I can't see Barack Obama getting behind this. I see a large media blackout. I don't think this is already at the point where it should be on NBC, ABC News, CBS, Fox, if they were actually legitimate, CNN, but they're not. They're not reporting on this. So let's say it does pass through Congress. Do we have a shot at actually auditing the Fed?
Well, Obama might very well veto it. After all, he's a bankster president, just like Bush was. Mm-hmm. This is who puts these guys into office. There are other interest groups involved, but his biggest donors were the big banks on Wall Street. Mm-hmm. So he might very well veto it, but we can't overlook the possibility of popular opposition. Mm-hmm. Popular opposition by the American people can actually make these birds in Washington do what they don't want to do, and that is something in our interest. So were this bill to be passed, and were Obama to veto it, I think and hope that there would be some indignation. So, again, these are just small. We're just taking baby steps towards getting rid of this horrible thing. But every baby step helps, and I can tell you they are worried at the Fed. They don't like this bill. They don't like any discussion of themselves. There was an article in Fortune magazine, I beg your pardon, Forbes magazine recently, saying, look, we have to make the Fed boring again, that it's very bad to have anybody interested in it because it has to be independent, it has to be mysterious, it has to be with no oversight. It should be unmysterious, there should be oversight. We should at least know what the crooks are doing to us as they're taking our wallet. We should at least give us that. So Ron Paul's bill is a step in that direction. No, it's not everything we need, but it sure is would be a great change.
Well, absolutely. You know, I'm not trying to discourage anybody, and I really do hope that it goes through and that it does get the mainstream media attention that it deserves, so more and more people at least take a look at the issue, at least take a look at America, Freedom to Fascism if you don't have time to read a book on the subject matter, if you don't fully understand, you know, what Greenspan said in the Obama deception when he says, well, it really doesn't matter what the president does. We're outside of the president. We do what we want. You know, go check that out. I want to kind of shift gears. I want to play this City Year clip for PrisonPlanet.tv members and then discuss it on the other side. If you haven't seen this, you know, we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, but they are truly trying to hijack and indoctrinate the youth into this Stasi-like program. I mean, it's just so outrageous to me. And, you know, their first official day, their first holiday, the National Day of Civil Service, is of course going to be on 9/11, where they're going to have makeshift memorials around the country and people from City Year knocking on your door asking you to pledge. So let's hit the clip. Go ahead, Jaron.
We don't stop.
I am change. I've been around since the beginning of time.
What your country can do for you.
Over the years, I've had many faces. Over the years, I've had many looks.
I have a dream.
But I've always had the same goals. To make this world a better place by helping those who need it most. To never turn my back when things get tough. And to show that positive can always overpower negative. I am change. And this is what I wear.
And there's, you know, a bunch of these ads out there. There's one where a girl is talking about how she's shedding her individual skin and taking on a universal skin to build a new world when she puts on this jacket. And I mean, let's talk about let's talk about the figures they use, the fact that they're in militant formation, the fact that the people that they show never had people in militant formation to get their ideas across, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., but they're trying to sell this as kind of like this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like pseudo-fascism. I mean, they're wearing red, white, and black. What's your take on this, Lou?
Well, I think we've had a growing fascism in this country for some time. The Bush administration certainly was a fascist regime, and the Obama administration is stepping it up. I mean, what is fascism? It's not just an epithet. It's an actual political and economic system that involves a government-business partnership, big business, big government, in cahoots against the rest of us. Mm-hmm. It involves militarism. It involves crazed nationalism. It involves the suppression of civil liberties, and frequently it involves a uniform party militia. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have that until now. You're right, the Obama people seem to be intent on setting up some kind of uniformed party militia among the youth. And, of course, as your clip said, he went back during the campaign, he talked about a civilian security arm that he wants to set up with the federal government. Maybe like the neighborhood watch committees in Cuba, I don't know, but it's not good news.
Well, it seems even worse that they're now coming out and saying, you know what, we're going to use the Boy Scouts to fight terror. And the example that they use is a disgruntled Iraq war veteran come back home, and now he's a homegrown terrorist, and he's shooting people from a tower. Here come the Boy Scouts in their Explorers program, and then you see the photos in the New York Times, and they're giving these kids mock shotguns and assault weapons. It's blowing my mind, Lou.
Well, what is terrorism? I mean, terrorism is like a movable feast. I mean, it's whatever the government says it is. It's whatever the government, you know, it's in fact, resisting the government is terrorism. So that's people overseas, and that's people here. Now, of course, sometimes some of the stuff they call terrorism is evil. Sometimes it's just their epithet to demonize their enemies. So, you know, that's what they're doing with the Boy Scouts. And yeah, we have for